So during high school, as I said, I was kind of okay, and I got an interest in science. I remember watching the show Medical Detectives, and that sparked me into interest into microbiology and just working in the science lab. And then in grade 11, I remember we had a opportunity to go job shadow, or our school would send us on job shadowing for a couple of days. And I went and job shadowed a microbiologist. And I remember I was so fascinated by being able to see what the TB, what TB looks like under a microscope, and looking at HIV under a microscope. I remember they even allowed me to sit in while someone was getting bone marrow taken out. So it was really cool. It was really dope, and I was super interested in like microbiology and like the small things of science. And so I went and studied and applied and became a microbiologist. So I went and studied biotechnology. So biotechnology has four fields. So it's genetics, microbiology, which is like bacteria and microorganisms, and agricultural microbiology, which is like yeast and stuff in the wine industry and like grapes and like fermentation and stuff like that. And four, which is so those microbiology, genetics, agricultural microbiology, and DNA profiling. Yeah, DNA or DNA. And then once I finished studying, because I was just like, hey, I found out that studying biotechnology was only going to be 3 years, and I was like, I don't want to be at university for ages, because I remember my cousin was a doctor, and I was like seeing how long he was taking to study, and then I was like, I don't want to study that long. And so I was like, okay, 3 years to get a science degree, let's do this. And I studied and applied for, and I got in for biotechnology. I remember I was gonna go to UCT, and then on the last minute I switched to UWC, and I went to study at UWC. Like the day before UWC opened, I told my parents, hey, I'm gonna go to UWC and not UCT, type of thing. And yeah, I studied biotechnology 3 years, finished it in 3 years, and then I did an internship. And I did an internship at a place in Stellenbosch University, and that's where I did paternity tests. So I used to do paternity tests for people, and the stories and stuff are insane. If ever you have a private conversation with me about it, you can definitely have a private conversation about some of the stories that I had to deal with paternity tests. I don't know if you guys know like the Maury show, where they make fun of like you are the father and stuff. That's like legit what happens. It's like legit what happens, but like the behind the scenes, right? Behind the scenes. So I worked for a genetics company, did paternity tests, and they did also like genetically inherited diseases, stuff like that. We tested. I worked there for like 2 years, and that was 2012 to 2014. Yeah, 2012 to 2013. And then worked there for 2 years, and then I went and I got a job after doing my internship. I got a job at a food microbiology company in Cape Town. I got a job for a food microbiology company in Cape Town, and there I was testing food. And I remember while I was working there, my mom, whenever we used to go shopping for food and stuff, my mom would ask me, what have you tested? Is this food good? Is there anything wrong with these foods? You know, that thing. But obviously you couldn't say anything because you don't want to have them lose business, you know, because they are actual clients. And it's amazing what you learn about food and how our food process is processed, especially in South Africa, and like where the food comes from and stuff like that. So yeah, and I think one of the main projects we did there was bread. There was bread that was lasting for like 2 years, 2 years, 2.5 years. Bread that was able to be eaten after 2 years. It was lasting for like 2 years. I remember we were doing this bread project, and we would check it like you check it every month, and every 3 months you check it. And like 2 years, bro, 2 years, the bread was still really good. So don't hate on your bread, guys. And yeah, there was the bread, and then I left that company and went to an agricultural company. So then I worked on a wine farm. So I went from genetics to food microbiology to agricultural biology. So I covered basically all aspects of biotechnology. And I mean, I worked on the wine farm for 5 years, and that happened just before I came to Korea. And I worked on wine farm for 5 years. I mean, I was making my own wine. And when I went to the wine farm, I didn't know anything about wine. I had no idea about wine, and then I had to start learning about wine, and that's where I actually started getting an interest in wine and stuff like that. And then making my own wine, having to make my own wine, testing clients' wine, and then I had to also sit on the wine tasting panel. So I used to taste and test wine, taste and make wine. That was my job. Taste wine, test wine, make wine. And I was there for 5 years. 5 years, yeah. I remember I left. That was in 2019. Started in 2014. Left in 2019. And yeah, that was 5 years. 5 years of making wine. I remember. I think one of the weirdest stories was tasting 250 or 200 wines at 9 o'clock in the morning. No, tasting 35 champagnes or MCCs at 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:30, and then having to go and taste 200 wines at 11 o'clock the morning. 12 o'clock, I remember 12 o'clock afternoon, I was just like, guys, I'm done. I went to my manager, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna take like an hour, just need to, like, I had too much wine today, too much wine. Because even though you're tasting the wines, you still end up consuming a bit more, because some of the palate, you can only taste some of the faults, like at the back of your palate type of thing. So it was very harsh. And I remember that day I was like, yeah, guys, I'm done. I'm tapping out. I was tapping out, and then yeah. So that was my experience. That was how I got into science. So science ended up leading me into different fields, into learning to know completely different things. And that's the one thing I liked about biotechnology. You weren't just set to do one thing. You could do many things in many different fields. And that now enabled me to come in over and teach English, you know? So yeah, that I've always wanted, I still always wanted to be a forensic scientist. I really looked forward to being a forensic scientist. I just never had the chance. I had a bit of forensic science practice, but yeah, I always wanted to be the person working in the lab, doing doing genetic profiles, doing DNA runs. I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed extracting DNA, doing the whole process of the chemical reactions, making sure checking if your profiles match what is on the base, doing cuts, running PCR gels, making sure that your plates. I remember I used to be obsessed with blood plates. I used to be obsessed with making blood plates because it smelled like chocolate. So blood MRA plates used to smell like chocolate. It was so weird because the way the chemical that used to smell like chocolate. I used to love making those plates, and running tests on them was just so much fun. So yeah, that's why I was so interested in science. I enjoyed the fun part of science. I always say science. A lot of people think science is very boring and stuff, but there's a lot of fun in science when you are doing science. And yeah, it was always fun. I mean, when I was working at the place when I was doing the internship, I used to go in on Saturdays and just run genetic DNA samples. You're running about hundreds and hundreds of samples. Go in and just pitting and running hundreds of samples, making sure, and if you get like five that might be wrong, but everything else is right, and you don't have to test again the next week. It brings like such a joy. And then being able with the wine, learning how different yeast makes your wine taste different, how it makes the fermentation of your wine different, gives out more flavors, just the yeast that you use and things like that. It's an amazing field, and it's very underrated, especially in South Africa. Very underrated for a country that's so reliant on wine. People don't realize how much goes into the background of what is being done and stuff like that. So that's my science journey. And the next episode will be the last part of this series, which will be coming to Korea.